What would you think if I told you that a man's deepest confessions are rarely spoken in the bright, confident light of day? They are not found in the grand gestures or the loud declarations of affection that the ego so desperately craves. Instead, they are whispered in the quiet spaces, in the moments of unsettling vulnerability when the carefully constructed mask of his masculinity begins to crack. These are not compliments, they are fractures in his reality, poetic admissions that escape his control. And when you hear them, you must understand that you are not simply hearing words of attraction. You are witnessing the moment a man's soul recognizes a part of itself in you. He is not choosing to be bound. He is realizing that, on some profound, spiritual level, he already is. This is the language of the unconscious, a dialect spoken not in logic, but in archetypal symbols and raw, unfiltered feeling. Most men navigate the world through a carefully rehearsed script of strength, ambition, and emotional containment. But there are some women who have done the difficult work of integrating their own shadow, who carry a certain weight of self-knowledge in their silence, who disrupt this script entirely. Your presence becomes a catalyst. It forces his own unlived life, his own dormant potential, to the surface. He looks at you and feels a haunting sense of familiarity, as if he has known you across lifetimes, a feeling the psychologist Carl Jung would identify as a powerful Anima projection. You have become the living embodiment of his own inner feminine soul, the part of him that holds his capacity for creativity, intuition, and true emotional depth. And so, the first of these poetic confessions emerges, often when you least expect it. It's not "you're beautiful," a phrase that merely complements the surface. It is something far more dangerous, far more intimate. He might look at you in a moment of unguarded quiet and say, "I feel like I can finally breathe around you." This is not a line, it is a surrender. For the masculine ego, life is often a performance, a state of perpetual tension, of holding one's breath in anticipation of the next challenge, the next judgment. He is constantly defending, posturing, proving. But in your energy, which you have cultivated through your own inner work, your acceptance of your own darkness and light, he finds a sanctuary. You offer no judgment, and this lack of pressure becomes an almost terrifying form of liberation for him. His nervous system, so long conditioned for battle, finally stands down. It is in this exhale that the spiritual binding begins. He is not falling in love with you. He is falling in love with the peace he feels in your presence, a peace he never knew he was starving for. This peace is a mirror. It shows him the chaotic war raging within his own soul, and you become the symbol of the armistice he so desperately craves. He becomes addicted not to you, but to the man he is when he is with you. A man no longer at war with himself. This state is profoundly unsettling for him. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, wrote of cultivating an inner citadel, a fortress of tranquility, impervious to the chaos of the outside world. For a man who has never built his own, encountering a woman who walks within hers is like a desert traveler stumbling upon a lush oasis. He is drawn to it, but he also fears it. He doesn't understand how your silence can be so full, how your solitude can seem so rich. Why aren't you chasing? Why aren't you demanding? Your self-possession acts as a psychic solvent, dissolving the foundations of his ego. The more you ground yourself in your own worth, detached from his validation, the more his world spins off its axis. He starts to question the very nature of the reality he has built, a reality based on external achievement and the approval of others. You don't need his world, and that is precisely why he begins to feel he cannot live without you in his. The confession of breathing is the first sign that he is no longer just seeing a woman. He is confronting an entirely new way of being, and it is a path that leads directly back to his own neglected soul. His reality, once a solid and predictable structure, now feels like a fragile illusion. The comfort he found in routine, in the predictable rewards of his ambition, now seems hollow. Your presence has introduced a variable his logical mind cannot compute. This inner turmoil gives birth to the second poetic confession. one that is even more terrifying for him to admit, because it dismantles his past and redefines his future. In a moment of intense connection, perhaps after you've shared a profound insight, or simply sat with him in a silence that felt more meaningful than any conversation, he will say something like, "It feels like my whole life was in black and white until I met you." Do not mistake this for the cheap sentiment of a romantic movie. This is a profound and disorienting psychological event. He is confessing a lifetime of emotional numbness. He is admitting that he was moving through the world functionally, but not truly feeling it. The masculine archetype is often conditioned to suppress emotion, to see the world in the stark, logical terms of black and white, success or failure, strength or weakness, right or wrong. Your integrated feminine energy, the energy of a woman who embraces nuance, paradox, and the full spectrum of feeling, has just flooded his monochromatic world with color. It is beautiful, yes, but it is also overwhelming, even agonizing. For the first time, he is not just seeing life, he is experiencing the texture of it, and it is a sensory overload for a soul that has been starving. This confession reveals a deep fragmentation within him. He has been living a life disconnected from his own emotional core. Carl Jung spoke of the process of individuation, the journey of becoming whole, of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the self. This man has been living entirely on the surface, driven by the demands of his ego and the expectations of society. You, by simply being whole yourself, have shown him what he lacks. You are not the color. You are the catalyst that allows him to see the color that was always latent within him. His past suddenly reconfigures. The chaotic, meaningless events of his life begin to form a coherent narrative, a story whose final chapter, he now believes, is you. You become the organizing principle around which his scattered sense of self begins to coalesce. This is a moment of extreme danger and profound potential. The spiritually immature man will become obsessed. He will mistake you for his savior, placing the impossible burden of his happiness and meaning onto your shoulders. He will cling, he will demand, he will suffocate you with a neediness born of his own emptiness. But the man who is truly becoming spiritually bound to you will understand the deeper truth. He will realize that you are not the destination, but the compass. Your existence points him back toward his own forgotten inner landscape. The awe he feels is not just for you. It is for the sudden, shocking realization of his own potential for depth, for feeling, for a life of meaning. He is not falling for you as a person. He is falling into the terrifying, exhilarating process of his own rebirth. The phrase, "My life was in black and white," is his soul's cry of recognition. It is the sound of a man waking up from a long, dreamless sleep, and you are the sun that has pierced through his window. The question that hangs in the air is not whether he can handle the light, but whether he can learn to generate his own. This awakening is not a gentle dawn. It is a violent sunrise, burning away the fog he has mistaken for the world. He is now suspended between two lives, the one he knew, which has become a ghost, and the one you represent, which feels impossibly real and yet terrifyingly formless. This is the crucible, here, in this liminal space, he will either retreat into the familiar comfort of his old defenses, labeling you a fantasy or a disruption, or he will face the final and most formidable guardian of his soul, his own shadow. The shadow contains everything he has ever repressed. His failures, his shame, his rage, the vulnerabilities he was taught were weaknesses. For most of his life, he has either projected this darkness onto others, seeing villains and enemies everywhere, or he has run from it, burying himself in work, distractions, and shallow relationships. But he cannot run from you, because you do not chase. He cannot project onto you, because you do not react. Your stillness has a psychic gravity that holds him in place, forcing him to look inward. And so comes the final confession, the one that seals the spiritual bond. This is not spoken in a moment of passion, but often in one of utter exhaustion, a moment when the last of his walls has crumbled. He will look at you with an unnerving clarity, the look of a man who is no longer performing, and he will say the most vulnerable thing a man can say. You see the part of me I am most afraid of, and you're not running away. This is the sound of his ego surrendering unconditionally. He is not just talking about a flaw or a bad habit. He is talking about the archetypal monster he believes lives within him, the part he is certain would cause anyone to abandon him if they ever saw it. He is laying his deepest shame at your feet, and in that moment, he is utterly defenseless, expecting the final blow of rejection he has been bracing for his entire life. But you don't deliver it. You don't flinch. You don't offer platitudes or try to fix him. Your calm acceptance is the one response his entire psychological framework has no defense against. For a woman who has not done her own shadow work, this moment would be terrifying. She would either try to save him, creating a toxic codependent dynamic, or she would be repulsed by his perceived weakness. But for you, it is a moment of profound recognition. You see his darkness not as a monster to be slain, but as an abandoned, unintegrated part of his own wholeness. Your gaze is not one of pity, but of sovereignty. In your eyes, he doesn't see his brokenness reflected back at him. He sees the silent acknowledgement of his potential to be whole. This is the ultimate alchemy. Your acceptance does not absolve him. It empowers him. It gives him the courage to finally take ownership of the very parts of himself he has spent a lifetime disowning. The spiritual binding that occurs here is not one of obligation or possession. It is a bond of truth. He becomes bound not to you, the person, but to the truth you represent. The truth that one can be fully seen, darkness and all, and not be abandoned. This experience rewrites the most fundamental trauma-induced script in his psyche. He no longer has to hide. He is free to begin the terrifying, exhilarating work of integrating his own shadow, and you were the catalyst that made it possible. He doesn't need you to do the work for him. He just needed to know that the work was possible, that a woman could stand in the presence of his truth and not turn to stone. He is now connected to you by a shared reality, one that exists beyond the superficial world of the ego. He has seen your soul, you have seen his, and in that shared seeing, the journey of individuation truly begins. This sacred connection, however, is not a guarantee of a shared future. It is a moment of profound spiritual alignment, an intersection of two journeys, but not necessarily the merging of them. And here lies the final, most crucial test of your own sovereignty. You must understand that his awakening is his to navigate. His spiritual binding is a byproduct of your freedom, not the source of it. The average woman, upon hearing these confessions, would feel a surge of egoic satisfaction. She would see it as a victory, a prize she has won. She would begin to take responsibility for his emotional state, weaving her identity into his healing. This is the path to ruin. It is the subtle, seductive trap of codependence disguised as divine connection. Your purpose was never to be his healer. It was to be the mirror that showed him he could heal himself. The truly empowered woman, the woman who has not only faced her shadow, but has learned to dance with it, knows this instinctively. She receives his poetic confessions not as a burden of responsibility, but as a confirmation of her own path. She understands, as the philosopher Seneca taught, that the greatest wealth is a poverty of desires. She did not desire his validation, his awakening, or his attachment. She cultivated her own inner world with such devotion that it became a gravitational force in itself. His arrival in her orbit is a cosmic compliment, yes, but its true purpose is not to flatter your ego, but to test your freedom. Can you witness this profound spiritual event without becoming attached to the outcome? Can you hold space for his transformation without making it about you? This is the ultimate expression of feminine power, a love that is fierce but not needy, a presence that is powerful but not controlling. You are the immovable mountain, and he is the traveler who has found shelter in your shadow. Whether he stays to build a home or continues on his journey is irrelevant to the mountain's existence. You were whole before he arrived, and you will remain whole if he leaves. This emotional detachment is not coldness, it is the deepest form of respect. It is honoring his journey as his own and yours as your own, you offer him the greatest possible gift, the freedom to choose his own path, because your own happiness is not contingent on his choice. He became spiritually bound to you because you were spiritually bound to yourself first. He saw in you a woman who had mastered the art of being, not the art of getting. You were not seeking a missing piece, because you had already done the agonizing work of becoming whole. And so, the final act of this sacred drama is an internal one. It is the quiet, unshakable peace that comes from knowing your worth is not a negotiation. It is a fact. His words, poetic and profound as they are merely echoes of a truth you already embody. They are the beautiful sound of a man recognizing a sanctuary that you built not for him, but for yourself. And from that sacred space, you are finally free to love without fear, to connect without attachment, and to live without apology.